The ground shook beneath Daniel's boots as the sky above burned red. Ships roared across the clouds, their engines screaming, leaving trails of fire in their wake. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. The enemy was faster, stranger, and everywhere at once. He was only a scout sent ahead of the main human forces, yet here he was caught in the middle of a war zone that had erupted without warning. Daniel ducked behind a broken pillar of black stone, his rifle gripped tight. The air was heavy with the smell of burnt metal and something else, something almost sweet. It was the scent of the alien world itself, reacting to destruction. He scanned the shattered ruins around him, searching for movement. His orders were clear: find survivors, gather intelligence, and avoid unnecessary contact. But already he could hear the faint cries of someone in trouble. The sound came from beyond the collapsed gate of what looked like an ancient temple. Each step he took toward it made the ground crunch with shattered crystal dust. As he neared the entrance, he saw movement in the steam rising from a pool inside. His instincts told him to be careful, but something else, a pull he couldn't explain, kept him going. The room beyond was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the water. Steam curled around the air, making it feel warmer than the cold ruins outside. In the middle of the pool, a figure sat half submerged, her long dark hair clinging to her wet skin. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, tall, slender, her skin carrying a faint iridescent glow, and her eyes as bright as molten silver. She looked up at him, startled, clutching a white towel tightly around herself. Daniel froze. He hadn't meant to intrude, but his presence was now impossible to ignore. The woman's breathing quickened, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. She spoke first, her voice carrying the strange melody, even in the urgency of her words. "You are human," she said, her tone filled with both fear and recognition. Daniel nodded slowly, lowering his rifle to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you. I heard you calling." She shook her head quickly. "You should not be here. You've seen me like this. And that means you are in great danger." His brow furrowed. "Danger? From who?" She looked toward the shadows at the far end of the chamber, her grip on the towel tightening. "From my people. It is forbidden for an outsider to see me without my ceremonial coverings. The law is clear, both the one who sees and the one seen must face death. Unless," she hesitated, her gaze locking on his. Daniel's stomach turned at the way she said the word, as if it carried weight beyond anything he could imagine. "Unless what?" he asked. "Unless we marry," she said finally, her voice steady now. Daniel almost laughed from the absurdity, but her eyes told him she wasn't joking. She stepped closer to the edge of the pool, the steam swirling around her like a shield. "My name is Leora. I am the daughter of the High Warden. If they find you here, they will kill you. And me. The only way the law will spare us is if we are bound as one." He wanted to argue, to tell her that human customs didn't work like that, but the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor behind him, heavy, deliberate, and growing closer. Leora's expression hardened. "It's already too late to leave unseen. Decide now, human." Daniel's mind raced. He had come here for reconnaissance, not a political entanglement. But the footsteps were no longer far, they were at the very doorway. Shadows moved across the wall as alien guards approached. Without thinking, he stepped toward her. "If this is the only way, then I agree." Her silver eyes widened, not with surprise but with a flicker of something else: respect, maybe even relief. She reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist. "Then, you must not speak when they come. Let me say the words." The guards entered, tall and imposing, their armor reflecting the dim light. One of them spoke in a deep, resonating voice. "Leora, explain this." She straightened, lifting her chin, her towel still wrapped tightly but her posture unyielding. "This human has invoked the right of binding. she said calmly. "By the laws of the High Warden, he is now my chosen." The guards exchanged looks. One of them stepped forward, his eyes narrowing at Daniel. "If that is true, then he will live, but he must be tested." Daniel didn't know what that meant, but the way the guard said it left no doubt. It would be dangerous. Leora's grip on his wrist tightened, a silent warning that whatever was coming next would determine whether their sudden alliance was truly enough to save them. Asterisk. Daniel's heart pounded as the guards formed a half-circle around them. Their armor was covered in etched markings that shimmered faintly under the mist. He could feel the weight of their stares, cold and measuring. The tallest one stepped forward, carrying a long curved spear tipped with a glowing crystal. "Human." The guard said in a low voice, "You have claimed the right of binding. If you are to marry the daughter of the High Warden, you must prove you are worthy. The trial will decide your fate." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Leora's fingers tightened on his wrist. She gave him a quick shake of the head, her silver eyes warning him to stay silent. She turned to the guards. "I will prepare him. Where is the trial to be held?" "In the Arena of Storms," the guard replied. "At first light." The guards left as quickly as they had come, their footsteps echoing through the temple corridor. Daniel exhaled slowly, only now realizing how tense his muscles had been. "Arena of Storms? That doesn't sound good," he muttered. Liora stepped out of the water, her towel still wrapped securely around her. She moved with a quiet confidence, even though the situation was far from safe. "It's not good," she admitted. "The arena is where warriors are tested against the elements and the beasts that live in them. Few survive without training." Daniel frowned. "Then why send me? They know I'm not one of your warriors." She glanced back at him. "Because if you fail, the law will be satisfied. You will die, and I will be punished for allowing you to see me. They will not have to accept the marriage." The bluntness of her words hit him hard. "So this is more of an execution than a trial," he said. "Yes," she replied softly, "unless you win." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. Leora led him to a hidden chamber deeper inside the temple, away from the guard's eyes. It was filled with old weapons, most of them strange and unfamiliar to him. She handed him a blade with a narrow, curved edge and a hilt wrapped in dark leather. "This is called a talkesh. It was my mother's. It's light, but strong enough to pierce the hide of a storm beast." Daniel examined it carefully. It was lighter than his combat knife but felt perfectly balanced. "You're sure about this?" Her expression softened for the first time since they met. "I don't want you to die. Whether you meant to or not, you've become tied to my fate. That means I will do what I can to help you survive." They trained for hours. Leora showed him how to read the wind inside the arena, how to keep his balance when the ground shifted, and where the beast's armor-like hides were weakest. By the time she finally told him to rest, his arms ached and his mind was spinning. At dawn, the guards returned. The morning light was dim, filtered through heavy clouds that carried a strange electrical glow. Daniel was led through winding stone corridors until they emerged into a vast open space surrounded by jagged cliffs. The air was thick with static, and low rumbles echoed in the distance. The arena floor was uneven, made of black rock with deep cracks that glowed faintly blue. Beyond the far edge, Daniel could see a swirling wall of clouds and lightning. He swallowed hard. This was no ordinary battleground, it was alive. The High Warden himself appeared on a raised platform above the arena. He was taller than any of the guards, his armor a deep silver with black inlays. His eyes were cold, but his voice carried over the wind with perfect clarity. "The human will face the storm beast. If he survives until the third strike of the sunbell, he is worthy." A gate opened on the far side, and a deep, guttural roar shook the ground. The creature that stepped through was massive, its body covered in thick, scale-like plates that shimmered with the same blue light as the cracks in the ground. Long, sharp horns curved from its head, and its eyes burned with a predator's focus. Daniel gripped the Talkesh tighter, his mind flashing through everything Leora had taught him. The beast lowered its head and charged, the ground trembling under its weight. He rolled to the side at the last second, the creature's horns slicing through the space where he'd been standing. Sparks flew as its claws scraped the rock. Daniel's heart raced, but his movements became sharper with each dodge. He struck once, testing the beast's hide, but the blade barely left a mark. The crowd above roared not in encouragement, but in anticipation of his failure. Lightning cracked overhead, striking the arena floor and sending shards of rock flying. Daniel used the distraction to circle toward the beast's flank, aiming for the spot Leora had told him was weakest. He lunged, the blade biting into a gap between the plates. The beast howled, twisting violently. Daniel was thrown to the ground. The wind knocked from his lungs. He scrambled to his feet just in time to see the creature charging again, faster this time, its eyes glowing brighter. The first strike of the sunbell echoed through the arena, a deep, resonating chime. 2 more to go. Daniel set his stance, sweat mixing with the beast's roar shook the arena again, louder this time, echoing off the jagged cliffs. Dust rained down from the walls, and lightning forked across the sky, making the air vibrate. Daniel's grip on the Talkesh tightened until his knuckles turned white. The creature lowered its head, the glowing blue lines along its armor pulsing faster. Daniel knew it was about to charge again. He didn't have the luxury of waiting, it was too fast. This time, instead of dodging to the side, he sprinted forward, straight at it. The crowd gasped at the move. No one expected the human to run toward death. But Daniel wasn't aiming for the horns. He dove under them, sliding across the black rock, the Talkesh flashing as he sliced at the softer flesh between the beast's front leg and chest. Blade bit deeper this time, and the beast roared in pain, stumbling for just a heartbeat. That was all Daniel needed to roll away before its massive claws slammed into the spot he'd just been. The rock cracked under the blow, leaving a glowing fissure. From above, Leora stood on the edge of the platform, her hands clenched at her sides. She didn't dare call out, but her eyes never left Daniel. She could see the way he was moving fast, unpredictable, refusing to fight the beast's way. The beast turned again, slower now, but its fury made up for the loss of speed. It swung its massive tail, and Daniel was too close to avoid it entirely. The impact hit him like a sledgehammer, throwing him across the arena. He slammed into the rocky ground and rolled, coughing from the pain in his ribs. The second strike of the sunbell rang out, deep and heavy, shaking through the arena. One more strike and he would be free, but he could barely breathe. Daniel forced himself up, his vision swimming. The beast's breathing was heavy now, steam curling from its mouth. It wasn't invincible, he had heard it, but it still had the advantage in strength. A sudden flash of lightning struck one of the blue glowing cracks in the ground, and Daniel's mind caught on something Leora had told him the night before. The storm is part of the fight. Use it against the beast. He started moving toward one of the wider fissures, baiting the creature to follow. Each step was calculated, just enough distance to keep the beast's focus locked on him. It worked. The creature thundered after him, its claws tearing up chunks of rock. The fissure glowed brighter as the storm above rumbled. Daniel braced himself, waiting for the timing to be perfect. The air shifted and the light from above grew blinding. Lightning split the sky and slammed into the crack, just as the beast's front leg landed over it. The explosion was deafening. Blue-white energy surged up through the beast's body, making its armored plates flare with light. It roared in pain, staggering back, smoke rising from between its scales. Daniel didn't waste the chance. He charged, driving the Talkesh deep into the same wound he'd made earlier. This time, the blade sank almost to the hilt. The beast screamed and thrashed. But its movements were slower, weaker. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some shouted in their alien tongue, others simply stared. This wasn't how the trial was supposed to go. A human wasn't supposed to last this long. Daniel yanked the blade free and backed away, keeping his eyes locked on the beast. He could feel every muscle in his body burning, but he refused to fall down above. The High Warden leaned forward, his expression unreadable. His daughter was watching with something close to hope, though she tried to keep her face composed. The beast lowered its head again, but this time the motion was sluggish. It was going to charge one last time. Daniel could feel it. He adjusted his stance, gripping the toSurvive with both hands. The storm above seemed to hold its breath. When the creature finally moved, Daniel met it head-on, sidestepping at the last second and dragging the blade across its exposed neck. Blue blood sprayed across the black rock, hissing as it hit the glowing fissures. The third strike of the sun bell rang out, echoing across the arena. The beast stumbled, then collapsed, its massive body shaking the ground. Daniel stood over it, chest heaving, the toSurvive still in his hand. He had survived. The arena fell silent for a heartbeat before the crowd erupted into shouts and cries. Some were angry, others astonished. Daniel looked up toward Leora. She was still there, her lips pressed together, but her eyes, those silver eyes, held a spark he hadn't seen before. The High Warden rose to his feet, raising a hand for silence. His voice was deep, carrying over the noise with ease. The trial is complete. The human lives, the rite of binding, will proceed. The crowd's reaction was mixed, but the law was the law. Daniel had proven himself. Still, as the guards came to escort him out of the arena, Daniel could see something in their eyes that told him this wasn't over. Surviving the beast was only the first step. There were other forces at work, forces that didn't want a human and the High Warden's daughter bound together. Daniel followed the guards out of the arena, every step heavy from exhaustion. His ribs ached with each breath, and his arms still trembled from gripping the toSurvive for so long. The crowd's noise faded behind him, replaced by the deep hum of the temple corridors. Leora was waiting in the inner hall, her face calm, but her eyes searching him for injuries. "You're alive," she said softly. "Barely," Daniel replied, trying to manage a tired smile. One of the guards gave them a sharp look, but said nothing. They walked in silence until they reached a private chamber. The heavy doors shut and the guards remained outside. Daniel finally let himself lean against the wall. "So that's it, right? Trial's over, we're safe?" Leora shook her head. "We passed the trial. That means my father must honor the rite of binding. But there are others who will see this as a threat. They will try to stop it." Daniel frowned. "Why would marrying me be such a problem?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Because you are human. My people have long feared your kind, too adaptable, too unpredictable. If I am bound to you, it sends a message that humans can stand as equals, or worse, as part of our ruling bloodline. There are those who would kill us both before letting that happen." Daniel exhaled slowly. He had faced war, fought in battles. But this was different. Here, the danger wore a smile and spoke in quiet halls. Before he could speak again, the heavy doors opened and the High Warden entered. His presence filled the room. His silver and black armor gleamed under the torchlight, and his voice was low but firm. "You fought well, human. I did not expect you to survive." Daniel straightened. "Neither did I." The High Warden studied him for a moment, then turned to Leora. "The binding ceremony will be held in 2 cycles. Until then, you are not to leave the inner sanctum. The law protects you, but only within these walls." Leora bowed her head. "Yes, Father." The Warden's eyes lingered on Daniel for a heartbeat longer before he left, the doors closing with a deep thud. Daniel let out the breath he'd been holding. "I'm guessing he's not my biggest fan. Leora's lips curved slightly. He respects strength, but that doesn't mean he trusts you. That night, Daniel lay on a low bed in the guest quarters, staring at the carved patterns on the ceiling. The silence felt too heavy, like the air itself was waiting for something. He was drifting towards sleep when he heard its soft footsteps. In the corridor outside, stopping just at his door, he reached for the talkesh on the bedside table. The door slid open without a sound, and a figure stepped inside. It wasn't a guard, it was a tall alien man, dressed in dark robes, his eyes cold. "You should not be here. Human," the man said quietly. "Leave now, while you still can. If you stay, the marriage will never happen, and your death will not be quick." Daniel stayed silent, gripping the talkesh tighter. The man's expression didn't change. "You think you survived the trial because of skill, perhaps, but there are other ways to end you. Poison in your food, a knife in the dark, an accident during the ceremony. Leave and you may yet live." Without waiting for a response, the man stepped back into the shadows and vanished as silently as he had come. Daniel sat in the darkness. For a long time after, his thoughts tangled. He could leave. It would be safer. But if he did, Leora would pay the price alone. Morning came with the sound of distant bells. Daniel met Leora in a quiet garden inside the sanctum, the air filled with the scent of alien flowers. He told her about the intruder. Her face hardened. That was no common threat. Those words, they belonged to the Shadow Circle. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Shadow Circle? They are an old faction, she explained. Assassins and spies, who serve no ruler but their own interests. If they are involved, it means someone with power is paying them to kill you. Or both of us, Daniel said grimly. Leora nodded. Then we must act first. If we wait for the ceremony, they will strike when we are most exposed. Daniel looked out over the garden, the alien sky painted in shades of violet and gold. So what's the plan? Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with quiet determination. We find out who sent them and make sure they never get the chance to try again. Night had fallen again, and the sanctum was quiet, too quiet. Daniel walked beside Leora through the dim corridors, the faint glow from the crystal torches casting their shadows along the walls. They weren't heading toward her chambers this time. They were heading deeper into the old tunnels beneath the temple. Leora moved with purpose, her steps silent. The Shadow Circle has a place below the city, she whispered. They meet in the forgotten chambers where the air smells of the deep earth. My mother told me of it before she died. Daniel adjusted the talkesh at his side. And you're sure it's still there? They never leave their lairs. Too many traps to set, too many secrets to guard. If they have been hired to kill us, they will be there. The passage grew narrower as they descended, the walls shifting from carved stone to rough rock. The air turned cooler, damp, with the faint drip of water echoing in the distance. Daniel's instincts told him they were stepping into a place where no guards patrolled and no law applied. They reached a small iron gate hidden behind a fallen slab. Leora pressed her hand against the side of the wall, finding a small carved sigil. With a click, the gate swung open silently. Inside, the tunnel widened into a chamber lit by dim red lanterns. Figures moved within, their robes dark, faces masked. Every one of them carried a blade curved like a predator's fang. Daniel and Leora stayed in the shadows, watching from a narrow alcove. A man stood at the center, his voice carrying over the murmurs. The human must not survive the ceremony. His blood would stain the rite, and the warden's daughter must not be allowed to bind herself to him. Another figure stepped forward. The warden's law is clear. The trial was passed. The people saw it. The leader's voice grew colder. Then the law must be broken. If we must kill them both, so be it. Leora's grip on Daniel's arm tightened. Her breathing was steady, but he could feel the tension in her fingers. Daniel leaned closer, whispering, That's our proof. We can take it to your father." She shook her head slightly. "If we tell him without a name, it will be dismissed as paranoia. We must know who gave the order." The leader removed his mask, and the firelight caught his face. Daniel recognized him immediately. It was the same man who had come to his quarters the night before. But when Leora saw his features, her eyes went wide with disbelief. "It's Counselor Varen," she breathed, almost too softly to hear. Daniel frowned. "Who?" "One of my father's closest advisors," she said. "If he is behind this, the conspiracy may be deeper than I thought." Before they could move, a sudden shift in the air made Daniel turn his head. A guard of the shadow circle had spotted them. The alarm was instant, a sharp cry, the hiss of steel being drawn. "Run," Daniel said. They bolted back into the tunnels as footsteps pounded behind them. The red glow faded into darkness, replaced by the cold light of the crystals embedded in the walls. Leora led the way, taking turns so sharp that Daniel nearly slipped more than once. The shouts grew louder. More footsteps joined the chase. Daniel spotted a narrow crack in the wall ahead. "There!" he called. They squeezed through, scraping their shoulders against the rock. The passage twisted downward, and soon they emerged into a forgotten storage room filled with old crates and broken spears. Leora shut the door behind them, pressing her back to it as she caught her breath. "We can't go back through the sanctum tonight. They'll be searching every hall," Daniel nodded. "Then we stay here until morning. And when the sun rises, we go straight to your father with what we know." But Leora didn't look convinced. "Varen will deny everything. And if he suspects we know the truth, he will strike before the ceremony." Daniel sat down on one of the crates, the Talkesh resting across his knees. "Then we don't just tell your father. We make Varen expose himself in front of everyone." Her eyes met his, the silver in them glinting faintly in the low light. "That will be dangerous." He allowed himself a small smile. "So is everything else I've done since I met you." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the distant echoes of the shadow circle's search. The night was far from over, and the ceremony was growing closer. Outside, the alien moon cast pale light over the city, its silver glow falling on the great spires of the Warden's palace. Somewhere above, the people were preparing for a binding that might never happen unless Daniel and Leora survived long enough to stand before them. Asterisk. The morning of the ceremony arrived with the sound of drums echoing across the city. From the palace balcony, Daniel could see the streets below filled with people, their clothes bright with the colors of celebration. But behind the music and cheers, there was tension in the air. He could feel it. Leora stood beside him, dressed in silver, ceremonial robes that shimmered in the sunlight. Her hair was braided with thin strands of white crystal, and a small crown rested on her head. She looked every bit the daughter of the High Warden, but her eyes stayed on him. "Remember," she said quietly, "we speak only when the moment comes, and when it comes, do not hesitate." Daniel adjusted the fitted armor they had given him for the ceremony, a mixture of human design and alien craftsmanship. He kept the Talkesh hidden under the long robe. The High Warden met them in the Grand Hall. His face was unreadable as he led them toward the binding platform in the center of the plaza. Thousands of eyes turned to watch as they stepped into the light. The ceremony began with the elders chanting in deep, resonating voices. The air was filled with the scent of burning herbs and the sound of bells carried from the temple towers. A golden circle was drawn on the stone floor, and Daniel and Leora were guided to stand within it. Counselor Varen was there too, standing close to the Warden, his expression calm. But Daniel caught the flicker of his eyes, a glance toward the shadows at the edge of the plaza. The shadow circle was here. Leora took Daniel's hand, her voice steady as she began the formal words. "By the right of binding, we stand together, bound by law and choice. Let none break this bond." The crowd murmured approval, But before the High Warden could speak, Daniel stepped forward, his voice carrying over the plaza. "And let all here know," he said, "that there are those among you who would see this binding end in blood." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The warden's eyes narrowed. "Human," he said sharply, "you speak boldly at a sacred rite. Explain." Daniel didn't hesitate. He pointed directly at Varen. "2 nights ago, he came to my quarters. He warned me to leave or die. Last night, we followed him into the tunnels beneath the city, where we saw him lead the Shadow Circle and order our deaths. He hides behind loyalty, but his hands are already stained with treachery." The plaza erupted into shouts. Viren's mask of calm slipped for the briefest moment before he barked, "Lies! The human seeks to twist your law for his own gain." But Leora stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "I saw him too. I heard the words with my own ears. The daughter of the High Warden does not lie." The warden's gaze shifted between them and Varen. His jaw tightened. "Guards," he began, but the order was never finished. A figure in dark robes lunged from the crowd, blade in hand, aiming straight for Daniel. The Shadow Circle had made its move. Daniel reacted on instinct, pulling the Talkesh from beneath his robe. The curved blade flashed as he deflected the strike, then drove forward, knocking the attacker to the ground. More assassins surged from the edges of the plaza, their weapons catching the sun. Lior, in retreat, she drew a small blade from her robe and stood back to back with Daniel. The two of them moved in unison, defending each other as the crowd screamed and scattered. The High Warden's guards finally rushed in, forming a wall around them. Varen tried to slip away in the chaos, but the warden's voice cut through the air like steel. "Stop him!" 2 guards tackled Varen before he could vanish into the crowd. The warden strode forward, his voice booming over the plaza. "You dare bring the Shadow Circle to my ceremony? You dare threaten my blood in my own city?" Varen struggled, but the warden's glare froze him in place. "By law," the warden said coldly, "treason is death." The plaza fell silent as Varen was dragged away. The assassins who survived were bound and taken with him. When the noise finally faded, the warden turned to Daniel and Leora. "Your words were true, and you fought not just for your own life, but for hers." He stepped closer, his eyes meeting Daniel's. "The rite of binding will continue without interruption." The crowd slowly gathered again, the fear giving way to awe. Daniel and Leora stood once more in the golden circle. This time, the warden himself spoke the final words. "By law and by choice, by trial and by blood, you are bound. May no shadow break this bond." The crowd cheered, the sound rising like a wave. Leora squeezed Daniel's hand, her silver eyes softer now. "You could have left," she said quietly, "but you stayed." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Guess I'm just not good at running away." As the celebration began around them, Daniel looked out at the city, the spires gleaming in the sun. He knew there would be more challenges ahead. 2 worlds bound together would never be simple. But for now, they had survived, together. And in this alien city, under a sky not his own, he had a place.